Welcome back to the BaseCamp Community Podcast, hosted by your head coaches, Tim Cusick and me, Namrita Brooke. We discuss timely topics that you can apply to get the most out of your training and learn to perform at your best. I am Namrita Brooke, one of the BaseCamp head coaches and the sports nutritionist. I've been coaching for over 15 years. I have a PhD in applied exercise physiology and a master's in sports nutrition, and I'm also a registered dietitian.
My name is Tim Cusick. I'm the other head coach here at BaseCamp. I've been coaching for over 20 years. I've had the luxury of coaching athletes to numerous national and world titles and to the Olympics. And today we're joined by a special guest, Menachem Brodie. Menachem, give us a little intro.
Hey everyone, I'm Menachem Brodie. I'm the BaseCamp head strength coach here. I hold a degree in exercise physiology and am a two-time international best-selling author. I've been coaching cyclists for over 15 years and strength for over 20, and I've been very fortunate and incredibly grateful to have had the opportunity to coach athletes to the European titles and to the Olympics.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us again. I think
Yeah,
the last time we had you on, it might have been one of our most listened to podcast episodes ever.
that's awesome.
So yeah, here's for number two.
It's great
All
to have
right.
you. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, today we have the, full team strength, nutrition, training because we're talking about performance. So we're getting to that time of the year where many of us out there are becoming more performance focused with events on the calendar, A events and such, versus earlier in the year when we spent a lot of time talking about training and optimal training and building fitness so we could express that fitness later when it comes to race time. So it is a clear shift. I mean, obviously, we're layering in and on top of what we've already done, but we're going to talk today about what the shift looks like when we think about performance, but also, more importantly, I guess, how did we get here? And we got here through layering in the elements. So we know that the best training, the best capacity, the best performance doesn't come from just doing more all the time. And we like to tend to think that it does because obviously, more is more until it's not. But so we're talking about today, how do we do it better? And the focus is really going to be on the concept of integration. So integrating the right training, the right fueling, the right strength. And how does that work? Of course, everything is then supported by recovery in that framework, but these systems work together. And in our group training programs, in our coaching, and within our ecosystem, we're always sort of emphasizing that concept of integration. So we'll talk more about that today and how an athlete can actually attain higher performance through that integration. Whether that's defined by better durability, improved recovery, improved health, so you can actually keep, training more. But when these elements are also not thought about optimally, I guess, or not integrated in the best way, they could yield worse results, right? So everything is a stress, everything adds fatigue. So if we're not doing it right, we might not get the results that we're seeking. So we're going to talk about that concept today.
Mhm.
Tim, anything to add as we get rolling?
Yeah, let's start with a little overview to maybe get people focused on where we're going. In our base camp program, we have the concept of the 360-degree athlete or the whole athlete. And this is an understanding that peak training or peak performance is truly an output of proper on the bike training, proper strength training, and proper fueling. If we can make those three work together, we can actually achieve new higher performance standards that we ever thought is possible. We call that our performance ecosystem. And it's an ecosystem because the integration is very tricky. And a lot of this integration is based off a misconception, which I'm going to point out. And for you watching us on YouTube, I'll do some visuals here, but for everybody else, I'll try to describe it. If I say, wow, I want to go into next season, I want my best performance ever, my greatest peak performances ever, we really have two peaks when we think about training in cycling training, endurance training as a whole, but almost more specifically cycling. We have this concept that I'm going to jump on my bike, I'm going to train 10, 12, 14, 6 hours a week, whatever the number of hours you have. And that hours of training on the bike are going to bring me to peak. Well, that's really your on the bike fitness peak that's not the same as what you're capable of as a whole athlete. Let's draw that line here. And I'm kind of holding my hand at mid screen. If we develop the ability as athletes to integrate strength training and then fuel your on the bike and strength training with proper quality nutrition, that real peak, that whole athlete peak, is a significant step higher. So now I'm holding my other hand up high. It's important to kind of visualize because of what I'm about to say. Now, I bet you that makes sense to everybody. Yeah, if I could do my on the bike and strength train and properly fuel every day, I would be better. The challenge is we often think there's something in between. Like if I occasionally do some strength work, or I on occasional days eat right, or I try to make up my nutrition once a week or cut back my nutrition once a week, I'll get results somewhere in between. That's the misconception of understanding whole athlete development. The concept of whole athlete development, I wouldn't say it's all or nothing, but it's 90-10, 80-20, meaning if you really want that transformative impact, you need to have the time and the discipline. And we're all challenged with both. Let's face it, we're not professional athletes. No one listening here is probably getting paid a lot of money to race their bike. But we need to have the commitment of the time and the discipline to build those whole athlete habits, because we're not just talking about adaptation, some short-term response to a specific stimuli. We're talking about transformative change as you as a performing athlete. And that takes more time, greater commitment, and proper integration. So why we wanted to do this was to try to get rid of that gray and fuzzy area in between. You might just be like, hey, I'm having fun on my bike. That's all I really want to do. And whatever I can produce from that fitness, I'm good with. And you might be like, I'm trying to go pro. I want my absolute peak, and I am disciplined enough to strength train and fuel correctly. It's the in between that we want for you all, which is most of us. I find seasons where I'm in between. That's who we want to talk about. Not only why this integration is important, but how to do it, because it has consequences, both positive and negative, when you move into this performance situation.
Yeah, I'm actually, so on that point, I'm gonna jump down. I was gonna organize my thoughts in a certain flow, but I want to jump right to this concept of better adaptation from the same training load, let's say using, this integration in an optimal way. And I do want to say, like, it is not all or nothing, especially, and I would love to hear from Menachem too, but it is, I think, approaching it in the way that you just said, Tim, where, it needs to be, you need to think beyond just the day and the workout and the adaptation from that workout. And I say this all the time when it comes to fueling, and it's like, you're not just fueling for that ride. And that's when athletes get so focused on, is it 30 grams of carbs? Is it 60 or 90? It's like, well, it's what we're doing with fueling and integration of fueling to support training, adaptation, and performance is so much bigger than that. And you really need to think of the whole day, from when you wake up and when you go to bed, all those behaviors in between, the contents of what you're taking in your body, quantity, quality, timing, all of that matters. And it matters more day after day when it's repeated. We talk about those repeated behaviors stacking up over time. Menachem, what do you have to add to this concept as we go deeper?
A couple things. I want to give specific examples for the listener so they understand that how this is tied together. Because what Tim said is exactly right. It's not a singular adaptation, right? It's building that consistency over time that creates things. So I want to give three bullet point actual real riders I'm working with right now. So the first one, top of mind, John is 58. He had a pretty nasty wipeout over the weekend, lost his wheel on a descent on some gravel. And he's bounced back. He's already back riding. He's had his fair share of tumbles. So he's been riding for 20 something years at this point, if I'm not mistaken. And he credits the strength training with his durability to take that hit. Whereas he said, before I started following your stuff, I'd be out for 1 or 2 weeks just because I haven't had that consistency. I was constantly lift in the winter and then come back in the summer. A lot of it, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the adaptations take time. And this is what a lot of people are missing right now with the strength training. If just like you're saying with how many grams of carbs is it, it's not just one workout here or there. It's a matter of over the course of time, how does my strength vary day to day, and am I bringing that level up? Like we push the ceiling up and then we fill that space. When you're going into winter training and you're just doing strength there, you're creating the space and then you're letting that ceiling collapse back down every winter. And it just creates a waste of energy. You're not really integrating things. You're kind of just doing something to say you're doing it versus building that consistency and allowing those tissues to take hold, or that changes to take hold in the tissues. And this is where the nutrition, the riding, and the strength all need to come together. Like strength training for performance is not what we're seeing in the general masses right now of like lifting heavy stuff and going. Like there's an ebb and flow. And often on a week to week, it's not linear. It's very non-linear, especially for my master's athletes. Like Carl's 59. We've been working together now for, this is the beginning of our third year. He essentially came to me and said, hey, I want to work with you on a full Olympic cycle and see what I can do. He's now putting out regularly 9.2 watts per kilo at 58 years old, and I think he's 65 kilos for his 1 minute power, like consistently. And that's taken the time of the adaptations of the nutrition was first, then we got the ride up, and now we've added the strength where we're actually moving heavy stuff, but that was only possible, and he tagged this early. I only feel because I got my nutrition so I could actually ride. Then we built the riding out. And then while we're doing that, I'm building movement efficiency and becoming familiar with my body and how it feels throughout the year. His term was essentially, I feel like I'm building my own personal tsunami, and then I'm trying to decide when to allow that to come together in full force. And that's that integration. It's like, how do we build that tsunami versus these small waves that just kind of come in and you get like a good surfability one here or there.
Let's pull back on integration from what you both just said, one in an overview, one in some examples, because I think it's really important that we come back to the high level and get people to understand the integration. Here's a message for the audience, right? Here's how it works. Strength training allows for greater tolerance of workout stress, meaning you could do some more work, you can maintain some more force production, you could do that last interval a little harder as an oversimplification. So that's important. So we need to layer in strength training because we can simply do more work and tolerate more work at the muscular level. Let's call it muscular level. On the bike training then can leverage that increased work to improve the specific stimuli that we're trying. I can do that one more interval. I can do a half an hour more at tempo or 1 hour more a day if I have the time to actually do that training. So those two are interacting at a complementary level. Nutrition fueling comes in at a fully supportive level because if you don't fuel that ability to tolerate and do more work, you're not going to be able to if the energy's there. And then almost as important, if not more important, proper everyday nutrition and fueling then improves and accelerates the recovery, the restoration, and the adaptation. And that's how all three of those are integrating. They each play together. And you got to oversimplify it. Like when you do them all, you can do more quality work. Now you need to time that well and have everything in good training rhythm and progression. But if you wanted to narrow down the benefit of proper integration, that's the end game. You can do more quality work.
Yeah, I think a great way to think about this. So a higher level example. So we've talked about performance and the concept of durability lately. So I think we actually even said this on the podcast before on the durability episode, but we can't have improved durability without this integration. So I'm just thinking about, again, integrating the training, the specific training load, the specific workouts, yes, but the nutrition and the strength with that. So how would I find durability? How would I define durability in this case? And how is it influenced by the integration? I mean, obviously holding power late in the ride, that is a function of, yes, the fitness you've built through training, but also the muscular, capabilities, the energy available, climbing well, same thing after several hours, repeatability, so repeated hard efforts, recovery in between sessions that allows you to do, if you're doing block training or if you're training for something ultra long, better injury avoidance. You can't really have that without the strength training and the nutrition. And then something we don't talk about as much, but it is directly related, would be just movement patterns and how you're moving under fatigue. So it's not necessarily just about the force being translated or applied, but also just the quality of your movement, right?
Yeah. May I? Is that right? That's what a lot of people miss with strength training. Like the strength training for performance is a completely different animal. Like what we have right now is we're essentially stuck in the 1980s with bodybuilding approaches, like squatting heavy, deadlifting heavy the same day. But really, when you're thinking about strength training for performance, and when I say performance, I'm not just talking about that double peak Tim just mentioned at the beginning here, right? Just on the bike. I'm talking about a human ability to move. When you're strength training, a lot of what you're after is actually, it's not just muscular adaptation, right? We're not just looking for the ATP PC system to be able to be more functional, so to speak, or more durable, but it's also the right stiffness in the right time at the right place. Essentially getting better coordination. Myelination is a huge part of it. It's just like you're working on high cadence, that fast pedaling. You need constant regular exposure to strength training. You're doing the same thing over and over again. And really, it comes down to small changes in your strength movements or strength patterning. And the last one, and this has become a big thing the last couple of years, is bone. Like each one of these tissues adapts at different rates. The muscle regenerates at anywhere from 12 to 48 hours, depending on how young, etc. The tendon takes a little bit longer, anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. The ligaments can take 4 to 8 weeks because of lack of vascularization. And then you have the myelination. That can take upward of 6 to 8 weeks to actually thicken. And that's where you're getting a smaller impulse from your brain to actually create that movement. And then also subsequently having the proper stiffness in your entire body, not just your core. Like your core really is everything between your neck, elbows, and knees. But the bone takes anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. Like it's 6 weeks for a soft callus to heal. So if we're talking about bone strength and you're lifting heavy to get your bones, but you're only doing it for 6 months out of the year and then going into maintenance for half the year, like you're wasting your energy and time. I tell you, sign up for Pilates and do something else. I know that's kind of a shocker for people, but if you're looking for that durability, you have to build those tissue qualities. It's like Tim gets you to VO2 max that you can climb your hill faster than ever in April, and then your race is in August, and Tim's like, okay, go into maintenance for 3 months and see how it goes. Like, you'd fire him. At least I hope you would. Like, great guy, love you, but you're off your rocker.
Hey, let's talk about this again. I'll keep bringing back big picture, kind of quarterbacking the athlete perspective. Namrita talks about this concept of durability, how that has to be fueled. Menachem talks about the strength aspect. That's absolutely correct. One of the reasons you kind of have those two fitness peak platforms I was talking about, we tend to think of the change in physiological events that we're comfortable with. FTP, sprint, Pmax, like your maximum power. If I go to the gym all winter long, my Pmax is going to go up 100 watts. My sprint power is going to go up 100, 200 watts. That may or may not be true, but it's not really the driver of why you want a proper strength and nutrition training program integrated with your on the bike training. What you really will get is durability. You will get the ability to sustain higher powers for longer times, whether you're talking about an 8-hour race, a 4-hour race, or a 1-hour race, different points on a power duration curve. The impact, and this is kind of why sometimes it's hard to be patient with this integrated approach, because we're always looking for that short-term adaptation. I think it was great what you just laid out, Menachem, saying how long it takes to even begin to adapt. The long-term adaptation is you become a more durable athlete. You have the ability to sustain force production through the strength programs that you've been doing, and you have the ability to have pre-existing fuel and continuously fuel the force production required to move out that sustainability of certain power platforms. When you commit to a whole athlete approach, that's where you'll see the difference. Now, if you commit to it year over year, things like your FTP will change and probably change dynamically, just not in the first year. Because what you have to do is establish that strength and good fueling and all the disciplines, and then just use them as you get to be a better whole athlete to be able to train at a higher quality, higher load, more specific adaptation targeting, because now you can do that work. So a commitment to whole athlete strategy and integrating these three is a multi-year vision. Like, I'd love to put 40 watts on my FTP. It's not going to happen at my age, but you're not going to do that in 4 months of integrating these. That's going to be year over year type of growth.
I think that, I mean, that is such an important point, and it's even like when we talk about that with training, it's like, okay, we can't necessarily get you there. We probably can't get you there this season, but looking ahead, this would be our coach's approach to get you there. But it's so much more obvious to me when you think about it this way with layering the elements and how long does that adaptation take, and then how is it supported? I used to say, look, so when I started working with an athlete, you can get to point A to point B, and you have this like the steepness of this line to reach your goal. And then when you add in nutrition, you get to point B faster because you're just able to keep up with the training more. You have more energy. You get to your, let's say it's a number faster. Now I'm thinking about it like you have strength layered in, and you're actually, it's like Menachem said, you're holding the ceiling up for longer. So when you take one of those elements away, everything kind of collapses, and you roll back down the hill, and start over again. Um, but taking this stacking approach where we're building durable athletes, season after season, that's such a healthier way to think about long-term athlete development to me. And especially when you're an aging athlete or older athlete who, maybe peak power numbers are not the thing that you want to be chasing anymore. It's long-term athlete growth and development and health span too, because we can't also separate long-term health and longevity from performance at really at any point, but specifically now referring to aging athletes. Yeah, that's such a great way to think about that time continuum and how I'm going to develop in it. I mean, to me, is very exciting. It gives you a lot of new goals to work towards versus the same old thing like, oh, another season where my FTP hasn't changed.
You
Yeah, I
know,
like
go ahead, Mark. Go ahead.
I like looking at it, and I shared this in our summit last week. I really like it looking at it in Olympic cycles, and I think if people do that, look at it in four. There's a reason Olympics are every 4 years. To have true change takes time, right? It's not just a political thing. We're like, oh, 4 years because we have to build a stadium. I'm sure that was part of the consideration, but a lot of it is like physiologically, like when you get to that point, if you start looking at things in a 2 to 4 year cycle, it gets a lot easier. Like it just makes more sense. So when you're looking to improve the ability to tolerate load, if you look at it exactly as Namrita said, or as you said, Tim, like instead of like, oh, I need 40 watts on my FTP, like, and this is where Carl was great for the journey we went on, is first we build your nutrition, we get you into good habits because that provides everything. We're learning the basic fundamental movements, we're getting you to start to move. When you start looking at it that way versus like how much did I squat last winter, how much can I squat this, you start to see two magical things happen. One, on your bad days, they're better than they were before. And then your good days, you get these, I am Thor, God of Thunder days where you're like, you hit a PR, you take the Strava, you jump up like 15, whatever it may be. Those start to come more frequently when you think of it as a 2 to 4 year cycle. So instead of focusing on the minutia, nose to the grindstone, you're like, okay, I punched the clock today. It didn't feel great, but I focused on quality and I got there. And for masters athletes, that's where you can get better force production and tissue capacity because you're not so focused on what did I do last week. You're like, wow, that actually is my fastest ride by half a mile an hour and it felt way easier. Like, what did I do? It's like, well, your fueling's been better for 4 months. Your strength training's been more consistent. And that may mean that you're discounting or reducing your riding. I know people don't throw your phones against the wall. You have to listen to the rest of the podcast to get the rest of it. But reducing your riding by if let's say you're doing 12 hours, maybe we do 10 and we replace those 2 hours with strength training. So it's not more is better, it's better is better. And when you start to do that, that's where the durability can come up and you're really reducing the cost for the repeated movements because you're giving a little bit more variety and balancing out all that time on the bike.
Couldn't agree more. And that leads me to a topic I really want to talk about because I literally swear I've answered this question about 10,000 times in my coaching life cycle. The goal is not more is more, right? When we think about training as a whole, we tend to think in load terms. And this is part of like the performance management chart can trick us into this. We just want that blue line going up, right? Our CTL or our fitness. If, as long as I can keep making that line go up, I'm healthier. And that, or I'm stronger. That has preconceived us to the concept that better adaptation comes from more training load. If I just keep adding more and more and more, I'll just keep getting faster. And what confirms that? That does happen early when we first get into endurance sports, early in our season and stuff like that. That correlates really well in just kind of getting rolling and building your aerobic foundation. But after those first 6 to 8 weeks of foundation building, or the first 6 months, you start riding a bike, you're at a point of diminishing returns, and your mentality needs to shift to this. And I'd love to hear your opinions on this once I say it and describe it. Your goal is no longer more training load. It might be part, but you want better adaptation for the same training load you're giving. And this is why I say it now. You might be listening to this podcast already and be like, well, I only have my 12 hours. We understand that. We're not saying the path is more, even though if you could find a little more time, take it. But we want to get better adaptation from the time you're already putting into this sport. If you can integrate these three things well, that will happen. But to get there, we have to change our perception that better adaptation comes from increased training load, what Menachem just described as more is more. Namrita, what's your thoughts on that as a concept and getting people to kind of grasp it?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said it because I've had that conversation with no less than 3 to 5 athletes lately, and they all kind of like look at me like, yeah, I know you're right, but I still don't believe it. But it's true. So, and I think it's a shift in how we as athletes have thought about these things over the years. And I'm going to use a nutrition example, but we used to think, when I started working with athletes, we would, their goal coming in was, I need to lose 10 pounds before September. This is my like A race. And then so like they focus on as they're adding more volume and more intensity, they're trying to lose weight. And there's this like imminent goal in their mind. Like it's a key part of how they define success is like what they weigh. And then, okay, so they do these things that they know they can't sustain. This is a very temporary thing. They probably are showing up to the start line like far weaker. I'll just use stronger versus weaker, that maybe they're a little bit lighter, maybe may or may not have attained their race target for weight, but think about like all the things that are they're focusing on that we would say, no, those are not necessarily the most important things to focus on now, right? When we think about a healthier whole athlete that can perform better. So then after their A race, they just go the other way and they're like, oh, I've sacrificed, food for so long, and now they regain everything, and then they allow themselves another 5 to 8 pounds of weight gain in the off season, and the cycle begins again. And it is not the best way to do things. And we think about what we're talking about now, thinking far ahead, looking at the behaviors that are going to support your longer term goals, and really focusing on that adaptation. It allows you to maybe do more if more is attainable for you, but it's thinking about more in a different way, right? Like I 110% agree. And I never ever would have said or believed this because I am the person who's always avoided strength training unless someone makes me do it because I'm paying for it. And I would always rather just run or ride. And I love to eat, so that was never an issue. But I absolutely believe it is far better for supporting performance capacity and actual performance to layer in the strength work, take some time off the bike, allow your body to develop the other systems that you've ignored for so long.
Yeah,
Malcolm, what's your thoughts on better adaptation from the same training load?
so I think that for me was it's either you call it dumb luck, the universe, or the good Lord putting me in the right place. When I started powerlifting at the age of 16, I had the right coach at the right time. He just happened to be at the same community center. And he essentially taught me this very young because I very much read the books. I went all in. This is before the internet was really a thing. So I had to order the books or go to the library. If you guys remember pulling the index cards out and doing that stuff. And I learned like, oh, there's linear periodization for strength. And my coach was like, no, that's in a textbook, that's great, but you're a human. So you're going to break up with girlfriends. You're going to have late nights because you're a teenager. And of course I argued with him on that and he was right? Like when we go through, and I learned this many years ago, when you get to a CTL of 100 on riding, like it gets harder to actually build that fitness. Like you got to work even more. So my whole mantra from learning from my coach from powerlifting is train smarter, not harder. Like, how do I learn how to move that weight, that heavy weight, without having to put as much work in, like without grinding, without, blowing my back out, which, it is what it is. But if we do that with small focus, and this is where a lot of, I think, folks miss, like the strength training, if you're looking at improving your ability to tolerate the load and improve your force production, it's not about going to the gym and crushing yourself. Like if you just want to add muscle, great. But if you're looking to improve the force production, tissue capacity, and reduce the cost of the repeated movement and help you to stay more stable under fatigue, you need to be more mindful. It's about going into the gym and doing it with more focus on technique and let the weight get easier versus every week going harder. The same thing on the bike. I mean, it's 3 hour ride, sure, but let's do a progressive ride. Let's add aerobic power at the end where you're having to do nose breathing only and just polishing that off versus adding another half hour.
Yeah. So to close kind of the topic of greater adaptation, same training load, and put these, what you're hearing today and people listening, the key takeaway as endurance athletes, you tend to have a high process focus. Like, and the process is, I have a workout today, right? How many of us just use that language in everything we do? Like if I'm doing anything above a slow walk, oh, it's a workout, baby. Like it should be it's got to be on Strava. It should be in Training Peaks, right? But we do, and we have a 1 hour, a 90-minute. It has an interval. It has a this. We're very, very process focused. So we get very focused on check marks. I did the process. I did the process. I did the process. The concept here is move away. It's not simply more training, more process. It's if you've finished every ride and said, did I improve the process? Was I able to train a little better? Kind of what Menachem was saying. Was I able to fuel that a little better and adapt a little better? Like Namrita was saying, that should be the win. If I was meant to do a 2 hour ride and I did a 90-minute ride and I found time for 30 minutes of strength training and then I properly fueled that ride and had a proper recovery fueling, that might be, I only did 90 minutes on the bike, right? That's what people want to do. I missed my process by 30 minutes, but that 30 minutes you gave to strength training and proper fueling, or 45 minutes, whatever you're not, an hour, whatever your number is, that's what you're training. Your goal isn't just checking the marks and doing more of the process. It's a better response. Think about that process we call training is what is going to give me the best response. I'm investing precious time. I want the highest return. Now,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so I want to help people listening to this identify, like, are they doing the process right? So maybe they do have a strength coach and they are paying attention to nutrition and they feel like they have a good coach and a training plan. But so how do they know? And I would say, if you identify that you're more often than not in non-functional overreaching status, that is an indication to me that your process needs to be improved. So I just want to give a couple indications of what that might look like to you. And you can self-identify here, but you might still be able to complete the workouts, but you're not getting faster. You're stagnating. You might feel flat. So that's kind of a feeling. You just don't have that like snap or extra energy in your legs that you would like to see. You're inconsistent. You're not sleeping well. Your hunger is kind of all over the place. Maybe you're not hungry. Maybe you're always hungry. Maybe you have increased soreness that's lasting excessively long after strength training sessions. Mood is another one that, I always talk about with athletes, mood, like you're irritable or just like always on edge or low motivation. That's another one. Um, those to me, and I'd love to hear if I'm missing any, are signs that something in the process is broken and it might not be your training plan.
Heck of a list. I think you nailed them all. For me, I am very attentive to sleep and hunger patterns. So I think those two, I think where we begin to see non-functional overreaching, which is an athlete status that they are still getting fresh enough to be able to do the work, but they're too fatigued to actually adapt to it. I tend to see that early in sleep pattern disruption and in hunger pattern disruption. One day hungry, next day not, and struggling some days to eat, and other days just uncontrollable hunger. I think that's a great point to be made. And it leads me to what I was going to say. So it's a
Mhm.
great discussion I'd like to have with you too, because I also think this is an area as we integrate these two is a problem. We tend to think it's all a benefit. Great. I just listened to Menachem, Namrita, and Tim. I'm going to start doing all three every day, and I'm going to be off and running. I'm going to be everything. There is a cost benefit analysis when we begin to build these three systems. The benefit is, I'm going to put that on the table because I want to talk about costs, the cautionary tales for people. The benefit is you will be stronger than ever. You'll be faster, your performance capacities will be higher, your ability to execute race or event performance will be significantly improved given a proper time investment, meaning it's not going to be tomorrow, it's going to take a longer term commitment. But the hidden cost, and the one that makes most people get a week or two into this type thinking, is you need a great program because the fatigue cost will often disrupt what we're trying to do. And that fatigue cost makes us believe, particularly acute fatigue, makes us believe this isn't working, or I'm wrong, or I'm going to lose everything if I keep doing this. Um, when we begin to pattern in strength training 2 to 3 times a week and proper nutrition and fueling, and that's so much change. When we think about general adaptation syndrome, like gas, like how we adapt to things, the first phase when you introduce change or new stimuli is your body goes into what's known as alarm phase. And in a very technical term, it kind of freaks out. So that feeling has to be dealt with. And assuming you have a proper program, you have to give it some time, 3 to 4 weeks, to begin to let your body get out of that alarm phase, enter what's known as the resistance phase, and now your body's dealing with it. So let's talk cost. Go ahead, Menachem.
Yeah, I want to start off with one that's really important. There's a lot of cycling coaches giving strength workouts. They're not really programs. What you just talked about, as cyclists, we think that when we hit the weight room, you have to have that soreness or initial this or that. That is one of the big things that is a big red flag of you're going down the wrong path and the cost is way too high. And what a lot of people do is they drop their bike, they get into the weight room, start moving heavy stuff after being on the bike all year. And really, strength training has to be dosed correctly. And it really is much less than people think it is. Now, when I worked with the Israel Endurance Track Program, we were either the fastest or one of the top 3 fastest programs in the world to go from having no program at all to medalists and Olympic qualifiers. We did 3 years. And a lot of this was because when we dosed the strength, when Steve and I talked, we're just looking for the lowest dose to help the riders get there. And it was much easier working with 19, 20, 21-year-olds after working 15 years for masters athletes, because the kids don't know any better, right? We're teaching them how to do it. But too much volume and too much soreness of poorly timed heavy work can interfere with the bike sessions. And that's what the previous strength coach did with them. Like, he was loading them up like, oh, they're 14, 15, 17, 18, we can push. Masters athletes, when you do that, your ability to absorb that mistake is going to spill out everything. And that's where you get back on the bike and the pedaling feels square and off. So when we look at it, strength should support the endurance, not compete with it. And that's where ramping back up and that general adaptation syndrome of, like, yes, on the bike you're feeling fatigue, in the weight room those movements should be coming easier. You should leave your workouts feeling better. And for example, when we had the team, the number, I always started with what hurts, who's not feeling great today. And the number of times I had an athlete, I told them to go home twice in 3 years. And both of them didn't sleep the night before because they were out partying. Right? So when you have that ability to go through the warm-up, how are you feeling? Oh, I feel a little bit better. Let's go a little bit lighter today for your first couple sets. And they max out at 70% of what was prescribed for the day, but they're moving better. Now you're driving those adaptations, and the cost is much less. And when they get on the bike, they're like, wow, I feel great. I thought I'd be wasted after yesterday. As a masters athlete, that's what you should be chasing, is finishing your strength and saying, instead of placing the hard bike session, heavy strength, together, so hard days hard, let's go where the hard strength session, I finish it feeling better, a little tired, but I get on the bike and go, wow, I can feel I'm moving better.
So the cost is you definitely have higher fatigue, but you are giving excellent advice. Everybody go back and re-listen to what he just said. It's going to keep coming back to this theme. More is not more. You want the minimum dose to support your on the bike performance. So you create the least amount of fatigue in that field that after a couple of weeks of adaptation will actually allow you to train more on the bike, but you have to be patient in the time transition. So Namrita, how does fueling support this? Or cost benefit of
Yeah.
fueling might be a better way to say it.
Yeah, and I think it goes again to, what have we believed for so long? And it's we need, carbs now, to support training, or maybe we still believe that we need low carb to support endurance rides, and we need high carb to support interval rides or racing. But I think I go to my pyramid. So we have a training pyramid, where we talk about consistency, rhythm, and progression. Then the fundamentals for nutrition and fueling to me are make sure you have adequate energy availability and then the quality of the energy that's coming in. So carb, protein, fat, and high quality nutrition, and then the timing. And so when we think about how we're layering the strength work to support the riding, we can't forget about that. So it's not just about protein, now additional protein, it's total calories, like you're expending energy to do this work and then you need to recover from it. So that takes energy, but it's still primarily the same, like breakdown of carbohydrate, protein, high quality, but the timing is super important. So, and if you're going long periods of low energy intake or low energy availability, that's not as supportive. And just from an energy standpoint, but also like how you feel. And when you start getting into some of these movements and then going, right to the bike, and we're looking for quality here in the execution, how you feel is a big part of that. And making sure that you have the right building blocks available, especially at the right time, I think is pretty important when we're talking about optimization. So it's really nothing new from what we've talked about in previous episodes, but it's one thing that tends to get forgotten, especially when you start layering strength. People just start pounding protein shakes, um, and aren't really thinking about the big picture anymore.
Can I
So
add an
how
element to something you just said?
Mhm.
Because I'd love for you to just confirm this with the audience. To me, when an athlete gets into a well integrated program of strength and on the bike training, they assuming they have good general nutrition practice, timing is the game changer. My own
Yeah.
personal experience, meaning because you're actually now like on the bike for X and then you're running to get to the gym and then you're in the gym, it's actually often your timing that breaks
Mhm.
down and you end up back filling in nutrition in the sense like,
Mhm.
oh, I finally have time for some protein or some carbs or whatever. It actually takes more time,
Mhm.
I'm sorry, more discipline to get
Mhm.
the timing right, in my opinion. And if you're an athlete moving into a fully integrated program, timing your nutrition should be a new and deep focus. Agree, disagree?
No, I totally agree. And I would say the same thing for anyone who has a very busy work schedule, or, you're working in
Good
surgery,
point.
or, you're a lawyer and you have long periods where you're like, I don't have time to eat. But if you're also trying to improve performance, health, strength, fitness, the timing is that final piece that is important. So you got to eat enough, eat the right things, and then time it well. Absolutely agree.
I was going to ask you because this is a problem I see all the time with people lifting heavy. Can you give one or two like specific changes that people can make in their nutrition when they start doing regular strength training to keep them? Because exactly what Tim said, they're backfilling. What are one or two strategies the listeners can use to kind of help them from, oh, I got to focus on protein versus I need, proteins are more uptake with carbohydrate. Like, what are one or two things the listeners can do to help with that?
Yeah, and I think, we focus on pre-ride, like, oh, I'm going to get my banana pre-ride or my bowl of cereal, and then I'm going to take in, one bottle an hour plus a gel during my ride, and then I have my recovery drink. So same concept. So before you go to the gym, depending on, again, the duration and the difficulty of the session, but if we're talking about relatively heavier and it's a hard day, I absolutely would do the same thing where I have a pre-strength session intake of something that has like eggs and rice, for example, or even a smoothie with, fruit and whey protein. Or if you're doing an extended session with strength followed by a ride, then add a little bit more protein to that middle snack that you would have after strength for recovery before you go into the ride, because you think you might be training for 3+ hours now if you're adding all that time together. And that's a long time to go without any calorie intake or low calorie intake. I always think about let time your intake around the areas of higher expenditure throughout the day. So rather than going 4 hours with not many calories, you're eating and drinking and then eating a bunch at night. Like that's not as ideal because you're doing the work earlier in the day. So stack the intake around there. It's the concept of fueling for the work required. And we don't just need more protein with strength. Again, we're using the strength to facilitate what we're doing on the bike. So there is an element of, yes, we need carbohydrates. Maybe not a ton more fluid depending on how much you're sweating or not sweating, but it's not just about protein anymore. Those protein bars and, protein everything.
And one of the common mistakes I see on that, and I have another question I want to bring up for the team. Like you do your strength training in the morning and then you're on the bike in the afternoon, or actually more frequently reversed. You're doing your on the bike training in the morning and then maybe after work or late afternoon, you're doing the strength training. You want to increase your intake during both those periods. Don't just be like, well, I really don't need it in the morning. I'll catch it up in my afternoon strength training. And then you just eat more in the afternoon. Put the calories around when think about it like a bracket around each workout you're doing, whether it's strength or whatever, and bracket your calories around those workouts. You'll adapt better. You'll increase your you'll tolerate the workload better. You'll adapt better from it. It's smart. So one additional point, talking cost benefits, because I see this mistake all the time, and it was something Namrita just said made me think about it. Let's imagine an athlete has a weekly schedule. Let's expand our thinking. And one of the things we look at in BaseCamp, we kind of have the working person's week. You get Monday off, you kind of have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday or work. You get Friday off. That allows you to get to work and start your Mondays and kind of wrap things up on Fridays. Then you have bigger Saturdays and Sundays. So let's just say that as one kind of pattern. The biggest struggle people do is they take on strength training. And then they're like, I have an idea. I'm going to put the strength training on the Monday and Friday, which are my rest days, because I have time. We see this all the time. I'm on video. I can see Menachem and Namrita both shaking their head. And then after 2 weeks in, they're like, I'm really tired. You're going to be really tired if you do that. You know why? You don't have any rest days. Keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy. If you can do it right, put your strength training days in your harder workout days. If you can't do both, you're probably lifting too much weight and doing too much work in the gym, or you're under fueling and you can't restore. And hopefully that helps bring together the integration point. So I'd love to hear any of your two comments on that as a consistent mistake and repairing that mistake.
So, yeah, do you want to go first, Namrita?
No, go for it.
What a lot of people will be surprised to find out is when we were working with the endurance team, we actually, as Steve and I worked very hard of pairing. And now, so remember, these are 19, 20, 21-year-olds. When you have the option, if you have an ability for like a half-hour lunchtime as a master's athlete to do your strength, hard ride in the morning, and then a shorter lunchtime strength, that's going to serve you better than hitting the gym in the evening because it disrupts sleep patterns. It's going to throw off your hunger cues. It'll take a couple months to get that evened out. A lot of people are surprised to hear that when we built the program, we actually put our strength training almost on the dot 2 hours after they finished their cool down. So they had enough time to bring their hormonal status down and come right into the gym. And what we taught the riders from a very young age with this, and what masters athletes need to learn more, leave your ego at the door. The weight on the bar doesn't matter. It's how you move the bar and how it feels to you, RPE. And when you do that, your hard days being hard, it allows that ebb and flow. And the beauty of this, you go from bookending your week, just as exactly Tim said, which is, it's essentially like saying, oh, I'm going to park the car on Mondays and Fridays, but I'm going to put a brake on it so it's going to stay at 5,000 RPM. Like you're going to blow something out on the engine, right? Like, yes, it's parking, but number one, your neighbors are going to complain, and number two, you're going to wear stuff out. When we take it and we pair it together and we allow you to have RPE, perceived exertion, or reps in reserve, same thing, different verbiage, it allows you to get that consistency and allows you to make the hard days just hard enough you get the adaptations. You can see fantastic returns from that as long as you're being consistent through the entire training year. And as Namrita said before, and this is so important, it's not just slamming the protein. The protein and carbohydrate together is important. So I have one guy, he doesn't have time to make a shake in the morning. I'm like, great, go to Starbucks, get a medium caramel macchiato and one serving of whey protein. And that's what you sip on during your warm up for your strength. So we're getting him around 350 calories. We're getting him 30 grams of protein, 33 grams of carbs, and 8 grams of fat. Now, he can handle the regular milk, but he noticed an immediate upshift. And he even tried a decaf a couple of weeks just to see. His energy for his weekend rides shot up because he had that fueling. And Namrita's got a smile on her face. So I'd love to hear like what your thoughts on that.
Uh, it was just in response to decaf. No, I think so.
Namrita does not
news.
do decaf. Let's be clear. I can tell you this for absolute fact. She does not do decaf.
Exactly. Um, right. So if you're layering in strength training now, I think doing what Tim said, protecting the rest day is important. So from a fueling perspective, I have two pieces of advice. One, if you find that you're extra hungry on a rest day because now you did intervals on Thursday and you also did strength training, if you're extra hungry on that Friday and it's your day off, I would say you might have underfueled a little bit the day before. So it's okay to eat a little bit more on that rest day. Focus on quality of your intake, focus on, timing and not going long periods without eating because again, you probably have a bigger weekend coming up. Um, so it's okay to maybe eat a little bit extra on that rest day because you're still adapting, especially if this program and the integration of the elements is newer to you. The other thing is maybe you're used to taking in like 30 to 50 grams of carbs on an endurance ride, and now that you're doing more work, the energy requirement on your musculoskeletal system, connective tissue, is higher now. So um, try fueling a little bit more even on your endurance days. So maybe 60, 70 grams of carbs an hour, because again, we're not just thinking about the specific session, we're thinking about the continuum of supporting the whole week and adapting. The other thing I was going to say, and I never go to supplements first. Um, Always take that, food first, energy first approach. But if there is a case for adding a protein supplement, or if you have some connective tissue um, issues with like an injury, history of injury, connective tissue or bone, potentially something like collagen. I mean, I know several athletes are taking creatine. So address the pyramid first, so taking enough energy intake, the quality of it, the timing, and then potentially address, with your coach or your sports nutritionist, dietitian, is there a place for additional support there?
Agreed. All right. With that understanding, I have one more question. It's funny. I'm reliving it literally 1,000 conversations in my head because of these being answers. So now when people ask me in the future, I am going to send them this podcast. Like, here you go. Here's your answers. And Menachem and I were actually talking about this in the last couple of days, and again this morning actually. These are all training advice. Like this is really good training. This is assuming you're doing some training, you're on the bike, your goal is performance. It might not be the best goal or the best total advice, particularly for the aging athlete, on a term here in BaseCamp we call health span. Like we all want to live longer, right? That's lifespan. Health span is how well do we move? How functional are we? How alert are all of the things we want? We don't want a long life. We want a quality life of health span. So when we talk about all the integration and trying to squeeze it all together, which is challenging, that might not be exactly your goals. In general, we're chasing a performance fitness. But if you're just a 60-year-old athlete who isn't really performing anymore, does this same principle apply? Does it the same idea lesser? Might there be some things differently you would do, more focused on, hey, I just want to be healthier and better. I'm not really an event or a race kind of athlete. Menachem, do you have any thoughts on the strength side of things?
Yeah, this is where really for the masters athletes, like heavy strength training, number one, it shouldn't compromise your key bike sessions, right? So it's again dosing around the bike plan. And the other thing that surprises a lot of people is we do heavy air quotes lifting, and this will be in the newsletter this month, heavy as you get into peak season. Like it's not just during base. During base is where we dial up the strength adaptations a bit more. So strength can and should be heavier in the general prep phases, but it should also be heavy, air quotes, as you get into peak season. And the reason this is important is when we do that, we're still driving the adaptations, which allows you to improve bone density, tendon health, ligament health, movement, joint orientation. So we don't think about posture so much anymore. We're thinking more, how do the joints orient to one another? Like if my bicep is here and my shoulder's all the way up here, well, it's not going to work as good, especially when you're in season as a masters athlete. Those heavy lifting sessions, again, air quotes, because it's driven by fatigue on the bike, it allows you to become more targeted with a lower volume, and the specificity is increasing, but you're getting better returns. And you finish your strength training, you get back on the bike the next day, and you're feeling and moving better. So you don't feel like you're becoming the hunchback of Notre Dame, or that neck or lower back pain is niggling. So it's really like a change of the accessory movements come dialed back. So like all the core stuff, sit-ups, and that goes into your warm-up for a very targeted, specific reason. And you're focusing more on movement quality and consistency, because that's what actually matters more and moves the dial for you, instead of chasing soreness or weight progression. And when you look at that, the health span for that, like I'm in Boston right now with a friend, and we were in the gym yesterday. There's a guy probably in his 70s, and you can see like he can lift heavy stuff, but he's so stiff like a bodybuilder. Like that's not what we want out of our strength training. We want to allow you to be a cyclist until you're 105, and like what's his name? Who we were talking about? Kathy's
Carl
Carl,
Gordon.
right? You want to be like Carl. You want to be a Centurion Olympics or whatever it's called. Like, the main thing is like we're not chasing after just the adaptations on the bike. We're trying to make you a better human being so you're more durable. And that's that integration where if you have the nutrition, you have the cycling as your main focus, the strength is going to caddy that along and allow it to buoy it and push it forward. So your aim in season is lift heavy once a week, one set, maybe do a warm-up set, a medium set, a heavy set, and then your accessories is one or two sets and you go home. You're in and out in 45 minutes, and 25 of that is your warm-up, right? So you go in, and that's where you improve that health span.
For me, I'll give a blunt summary what I think, and it might be what I'm hearing, but that's why I want to summarize my point and see if you can confirm it. I think one of the things as a 50 plus athlete, I'm 60 now, so it's like I always balance these two. Am I is my strength training as part of my integrated training, is my goal higher performance or health span? And I find that there's some overlap, but to me, and I think to the people listening, they're not exactly the same thing. And when you think about consequences, you as the performing athlete have to start making some decisions. Let's call it at 50 plus, pick a number, 55 plus, whatever, 40 plus. You have to start making decisions of what your true priorities are. As you get older, health span and performance exercise will kind of begin to, when it comes to strength and on the bike, will begin to diverge. Those are a path diverging. And the older we get, the more they diverge. They're still, you should be doing both. You should have them in an integrated system, but the specific execution demands of what it takes to maintain a healthy long life, health span, not that if you're, and what it takes to perform become two related, but different things.
Close. The one issue I have with that for masters athletes is that the better I can get you to feel and move off the bike, the more you can punish yourself on the bike.
True. Yeah.
Right. So we just, the adaptations for me more is the strength training. If anything, we double down on that a little bit more if you're looking for performance as a masters athlete, because we're looking to we want to spill a little bit out of that health span, but we can't take too much because your ability to get that back is very low, or it's a slow process. So we let you take a little bit more of a kyphotic curvature, let's say, in your upper back kind of rounding forward a little bit as you're getting closer to your TT or your main event, so you can be in that windage position and be super aero. But as soon as that event is done, we go full on, health span, where we're dialing that back. We're still keeping you on the bike so your fitness doesn't fall too much, but we allow you to get those tissues back to where they were so you're not stuck. So the two, I think, as you get to be a master's athlete, actually coincide way more than when you're younger. I think that they overlap. It's just a matter of
Yes.
how many sacrifices in your life are you going to make? The grandkids, the kids, work. That's kind of where we're at.
Namrita?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I would say I've really had to reevaluate how I spend the time I have available and, spend more time working on strength versus just going out and riding more. But from a nutrition standpoint, I think, and I explain this to all athletes kind of regardless of age, but there is that quality element of there's different, carbs are not just carbs. So you have simple carbs, you have complex carbs. And, I'm just going to say the main difference there is the complex carbs are going to have more nutrition value in terms of micronutrients and antioxidants and polyphenols and fiber and things that are healthy for your gut, for um, your blood. And that is so instead of just eating carbs and a bunch of sugar and, not paying attention to the nutritional quality of that, and then going to supplements, address your whole diet. And carbs are also vegetables and fruits and grains and dairy. All these other whole foods are supportive of health beyond just giving you energy for the bike and for recovery and for glycogen. So, but the thing is like when you're younger, you feel like you can get away with a lot, and you can to some degree, but been there also, and probably all of us at some point. Uh, but that underfueling early can really take a toll on what you have to work with later. So bone, muscle injury. I've seen way too many runners just, they were flying in college and now they just cannot run anymore. They don't compete at all anymore because of long-term underfueling and reds and all the long-term implications that come from that. Reproductive function, lots of things. So there is it's not something to just address from a nutrition standpoint when you're 50 plus, but if you're listening to this and you're younger, like it is so important. And I get very happy when parents call me with their high school mountain biker and they want to talk about nutrition then, or they're going to college and they want to learn how to eat better because they're recognizing that there are long-term ramifications for not addressing it early.
What a great point. And as anybody who's listened to my aging athlete talks, you need to treat it like investing for retirement. If you
Mhm.
wait till you're 55 to start investing for retirement, that's not going to go great. You need to start young. You need the earlier you start, the better your health span is going to be.
Mhm.
Can I ask another question? I swear I'm
Yeah.
done because we can wrap it up on this.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about a weekly integration model, but we just did. What about a seasonal? Because I have, and I don't know, I know I've discussed it with you, Namrita, and I believe Menachem and I have talked it out, but I have a very clear process when I'm coaching an athlete and I want to integrate these three when I look at a season. So I'm going to say that, and then maybe we'll do the dialogue. And you are absolutely, totally encouraged to pull apart what I'm about to say. I look at a training season really October 1 through the end of whatever event and race season is. Let's call it September 30th of the next year. October, November are your times to start with. Don't be so focused that start on the bike, and I'm oversimplifying. That's when you start your strength training. That's when you start your good nutrition habits. Your strength training development improvement pattern needs to run 4 to 8 weeks ahead of. So, and it's the best way, in my opinion, you can manage the fatigue. It needs to be running ahead of your true on the bike training season. So, yeah, you have a transition season and you're riding easy and not logging in as many hours. That's a great time to be working on your strength and movement development into maybe your first cycle of strength training. So, by the time you start increasing your hours and effort on the bike, the muscular preparation is there, the connective tissue preparation is there. That'll allow you to do both your strength training on the bike training without so much fatigue. It's timing. If in that same period you're fueling properly in that transition period and you're not you're appropriately balancing energy and recovering from the long-term energy intake without, and let's just say this, uh, for me, always a constant struggle without gaining more than maybe a couple of pounds as I'm fueling. I'm working on that longer term fueling recovery. If I can start with my October, November with those things in place with an athlete, I am significantly more convinced the on the bike performance will improve because we can train more, do more work, get better adaptation and response. That's my opinion. Namrita, what's your thoughts on that? Does that jive with your philosophy? Pick it apart, support it, whatever works for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's great, and the focus now from a nutrition and fueling standpoint is not around what is my body weight, right? So I think there's certain elements like there's a shift in mindset and how we fuel when we hit that transition period, and maybe we have a little extra time. We don't have all the higher intensity. We don't have the travel. And so we can take a step back and start eating more real food and more, fiber dense foods and things that maybe we sort of avoided for a reason when we were racing and riding a bunch. So there's that shift in, oh, okay, like I just kind of need to like slow things down. It's like that slow food versus, what's fast and what's easily digestible and what I know my gut can tolerate. But yeah, like putting the gels away, putting away like all the the high sugar foods that we have been relying on. So that's one shift. The other shift happens when we start training more again. So back in that next, cycle, we get so used to this way of eating again, and we're like, oh, now I need to start eating all the sugars to support the additional training load and more protein for recovery. So it's just like more, more, more. And then we get to the point of, okay, it's time to race. I need to do gut training. So I've got 4 to 8 weeks of gut training I need to do. Um, it's the shift is in, again, like how to better support your strength, your cycling, your performance, your recovery, and it's not on body weight anymore. I can't stress that enough. And there's multiple ways to think about quality of nutrition and intake, but that timing piece, if you've gotten to where you're like, all right, I get, complex carbs versus simple carbs. I get that. And, my diet does change a little bit depending on where I am in the season. Now address the timing. And I think you can unlock another level of um, performance, yeah, but also like optimize how much you can do and how much you can tolerate and adapt to in your day to day if you're addressing that timing as well. And that it's crazy how eye-opening it is for some people because they just have these beliefs like, oh, I don't have time to eat then. But we find certain things that work, like Menachem's example, with the coffee drink and the protein. It doesn't need to fit your idea of like this like perfect meal or food. Sometimes you just need something to bridge that gap, and that will allow you to keep moving forward.
Wow, what a great point. I always have this habit personally. I do this, it's so funny. And you're like, the foods I eat are seasonal and it's on the
Mhm.
bike seasonal,
Yeah.
meaning my transition period. What do I have in my pocket? A peanut butter and jelly
Yeah.
sandwich on whole grain bread. I'll be eating more whole food as I move into January and December. Maybe that peanut butter and jelly becomes honey and bananas on bread, or I'm moving towards more, carb and still trying to keep a certain amount. By March, it's drink mix, gels, cubes, and everything in my pocket sticks to my fingers.
Yeah.
I mean that's pretty much the journey for nutrition. But I
The
think
first
that
day, no, the first day I saw you last week, you had just come off a stage race and you're like, no more gels, no more
yes,
gels.
it's so funny. I did not train my gel belly. Like I
Yeah.
had gels like one workout before I went in the stage race, and then day one because it was brutal, I had like six.
Hmm.
And literally I was gel hungover. I was like, whoa, it felt like the old days. It's funny.
Yeah.
But you do have to prepare for that. It is part of the progression and it's what your body wants to do. So I appreciate that alignment there. That's my mindset. Menachem, what about, because this is so important in our base camp program. Let me talk about this. I preach it every year, but people miss it. They want to start the strength program when BaseCamp kicks off on December 1. And I keep telling people, start at least on November 1, get at least 4 weeks ahead. You'll deal with the fatigue of the entire winter training. But talk more about your philosophy, how you see that and what it means.
So very much like you. Again, I'm very fortunate. I got in as a strength coach and became a cycling coach very young in. So I work like you. October 1 or November 1 is where the season starts, and it runs until the end of September. So the anatomical adaptation is where a lot of people miss. And I actually use this, and I'm really glad to hear from Namrita. That's the way to do it, essentially, is I use that to train people to bring their nutrition back up. Because after a season, you need those 4 to 6 weeks to really refill everything, right? You got to get real food like you're talking about, Tim, peanut butter and honey. Like I love recommending peanut butter, honey, and banana rolls, like tortillas. You roll them up, put them in your back pocket. You can try jelly if you want, but that usually winds up on your top tube more than in your belly. But essentially, it's about getting you the anatomical adaptations, is getting you those 4 to 6 weeks. One, to allow the body to dial down. Like, you need to trough after a season, especially for those who are like trying to be permafit for the last couple of years. They are really surprised as to how well they do after a lower load, and just to focus on movement and where your position is. Once we get into that, we can then start dialing things up. And it's actually a little bit earlier than, or a little bit later than what you were talking about as far as getting ahead. Like, we start, essentially BaseCamp starts with hypertrophy 1, but it's a very low load. So we're working, like last year for the advanced program, we did 15-second eccentric hex bar deadlifts. And the feedback was like, wow, that's really slow. Like, yes. It helps you learn your body. It keeps stress down. It builds the ligaments and the tendons especially after a long season. You don't need a lot of weight, but that gives you the durability when we get into cycle 2 in BaseCamp to be able to push a little bit more weight, hypertrophy 2. And then from there, we get into max strength. Essentially, right now, the end of May, beginning of June, is where we start to transition over from max strength into conversion to sport specific. And that's where the nutrition piece, if we haven't done that in transition back in October, November, this is where we can get in trouble, where people are constantly chasing. Because that transition is a perfect time, like Namrita said, you're building those habits, you're getting into the regular timing thing. So if we do that while you're learning the movements, it allows, again, building that tidal wave, that tsunami, little bit by little bit, to allow you to come in. And that's where, if we get you to think about the season as November 1 or October 1, where you have a 4-week movement phase, it just lets you work the kinks out. You can address those things. Bike fit changes, really big. Have Lori Lee do a quick checkup on you and adjust things after a long season. It just makes it a lot easier, and it's mentally, you have that capacity to double down on nutrition and refocus on the bike, and it makes a big difference for everybody.
Couldn't agree more. We have to
Yeah,
figure out a
totally.
way to communicate that better to all of our members. November 1 should be strength day. So we'll work on
Yes.
that.
Yes. Well, Tim, do you want to give us kind of a summary of your, from head coach perspective, working with all the elements? Give us like your takeaway here before we close out.
I think let's talk from benefit down. First off, if you truly want a transformative approach towards reinventing what you think is peak or max capacity or performance capability, it absolutely requires a quality integration between on the bike training, strength training, and nutrition. When you can put those three together well, you can do things you did not think you were capable of. Now, that takes some time investment. It doesn't, I started today, I'm faster tomorrow. And those phases are an adaptive phase, which typically will truly, if you're doing it all well, it will still take 3 to 6 months to get true adaptation, because you're dealing with different fatigues and stimuli and all the things we've been talking about. That's adaptation. And if you can do it year over year, you will see true change probably in about 18 months to 12 months, 24 months, depends on your history. So you have adaptation and change, which will occur if you commit to it long term. This approach will both support your performance on the bike and your long-term health span, with some slight variations. You need to think about that and get good guidance in it. The challenges are there are negative consequences. you have to time your workouts well. Hard days hard, easy day easy. You need to time your season well. Start your strength and nutrition 4 to 6 weeks before you start your committed on the bike training. So those are ahead of you. They're already supporting you to not be overly fatigued as you really start ramping all of them together and allow you to adapt when you do start with the more serious on the bike training. I think consequence of it's important that you stay disciplined in the three. It's very easy when I see people try to really run this integration, they'll do strength well for a month and nutrition poorly. And then the month after that, they'll do nutrition well and miss strength, a fair amount of strength. It's like you do need to get 90% of them right, 80% of them right consistently month after month to really get the gains. I think, what you'll not think about, like, what are the hidden benefits? I'm going to give everybody one. It's so important and challenging for us as athletes, but it sounds so simple. When I'm in a good season where that integration, I get in the habit early and it's working, I just simply feel better. Like, it's funny, we didn't talk about that, right? Like, day in and day out. And Menachem suggested less bad days on the bike, less bad days in the morning, like, oh, I'm struggling to get out of bed. That was a lot yesterday. And you just overall feel better. And to be honest with you, that's part of the psychology of good training. Like, if I'm feeling fit and I'm having a couple of those days and I'm not struggling with so many days because I'm not balancing those things right, I think that just makes us enjoy the athlete us more. That enjoyment motivates us more. And I think that's just a good place to be. So I think in summary, that's kind of my closing takeaways and maybe some good advice for everybody listening of why you might want to work harder to integrate these.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, I think that sums it all up. Thanks everyone for listening. And for more coaching content and information on all our coaching programs, including Menachem's strength program and the integration of that with our expert guided one-on-one coaching, visit us at joinbasecamp.com. Our mission at Basecamp is to empower and educate you, the athlete, and to provide a training and learning community for the seasoned racer and newer rider alike. For more content like this, sign up for our monthly newsletter with free training, strength and nutrition, and mental performance tips at joinbasecamp.com. Thanks, and thanks, Menachem, for joining us.
Thanks, Menachem. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.